Welcome to Aspiring Hollywood. I'm Luciano Saber, and today we have a very special guest all the way from Miami, Florida, joining us in our studios. His name is John Zur. He's a journalist who aspires to be a screenwriter. John, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell me about yourself. You work for Miami Publication, is that correct?
That's correct. I'm a freelance writer, and I write for the Miami New Times predominantly as a freelance food critic and blogger, and also with Some Post Weekly as a staff writer. My work with Some Post Weekly is predominantly covering news features, stories, cover stories, and that's something that really intrigues me. My work with Some Post Weekly, which started out focusing on small political issues on Miami Beach, has definitely escalated. For example, a couple weeks ago, I published an article about the Setai Hotel and basically the issues that are going on there with the staff.
I do remember reading that article, which was very, very intriguing. I can't believe that that's happening in the 21st century in America, right? So tell me about it. You called it a sweatshop?
Sweatshop wasn't my word. Sweatshop came from one of the employees or former employees who worked at the Setai. I was led to the story because of a similar article that I had written last year for the Miami New Times with Michael Miller, who's a staff writer with the New Times. And we had spoken about the tip scamming that was going on at DeVito South Beach, which has subsequently closed. And from there, I was led through a contact from that story, through a source from that story, to a source at the Setai. And I started speaking with individuals who currently work there, as well as former employees who started tipping me off as to the treatment of students who are coming in on visas as part of an exchange program, and also for the treatment of the overall employees who work at the hotel. So the more that I uncovered, the more stories that I was acquiring, the more that I realized something serious is going on at the hotel. And through due diligence, I put together an article which examines exactly what's going on there. And I contacted the hotel a couple of times. They denied wanting to speak to me. They denied comment on it, but the more that I pushed and the more that I showed them, look, these are the facts that I have, the more that they're willing to talk. However, did they combat what's going on? Did they actually give me tangible proof to fight what's going on? That's neither here nor there. I'm continuing to push forward, though, with the facts that I found with this article and to try to uncover more information about the Setai and about other hotels in South Florida who are mistreating their employees, especially the employees that they're bringing over on visa.
Wow, that's pretty deep stuff and fascinating information. Now, you worked on other articles as well, right? Something about a towing company in Miami Beach?
A little bit of a feud between two of Miami Beach's two towing companies, Beach Towing and Tremont. And a little bit back and forth. Tremont wanted to build a new parking structure. Beach Towing was fighting that. Tremont has sued Beach Towing. And underneath it all, apparently one of the commissioners is acting as a conspirator on the side of Beach Towing. So definitely more information as we roll along, and I'm just trying to stick to the story and follow it through to see what else happens with that.
Right, so it sounds like being a reporter is not much different than writing a screenplay, because as a writer, as a screenplay writer, you have to study the subject matter that you're writing about and do your research and so forth, and then sit down and write a story which has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you have to have all of your components. Can you share a little bit about that? Because you did write a screenplay, right? Or several screenplays, as a matter of fact. I
have two finished, polished spec screenplays, and I have a third that I'm working on right now. And you're absolutely right. Whether it's a screenplay, whether it's an article that I'm writing, a cover story, or even just a blog, it still takes a discipline. It still takes a format. It still takes the ability to lead in with something compelling, something to grab the audience's attention, and to develop that story, filling it in with details, providing that mental picture, if you would, helping the audience to visualize really what you're trying to convey, and in the end summarizing it, wrapping it all up and making sure that it leaves the reader, leaves the audience with something to go home thinking about.
I teach screenwriting at UCLA, and there's a class for beginners that's called the first 10, right? The first 10 pages of the screenplay, which is very, very important component of the screenplay. right? Because it grabs, it has, like you said, it has to grab the reader. How important is that in an article, when you write an article?
Oh, it's paramount. You have to start off, that initial sentence has to be full of adjectives. Before that, it even has to start off with a title. You need something to draw that reader in, for them to even glance at the first paragraph. And then once you have their attention with the first paragraph, make sure you get right to the point. Make sure you let them know this is what this article is about. And you've got to draw them in with those adjectives. It's like the same thing with a screenplay. Draw them in with some action right off the bat. Establish the story. Don't let it meander into 20 or 30 pages before you start establishing the story. It needs to happen, like you're saying, in the first 10.
Right, and maybe there are other journalists out there in the audience watching this interview today who aspire to write their first screenplay, but maybe they don't know how to go about doing that. How did you get started on your screenplay, and how did you find the time, first of all?
Well, I've always had a passion for storytelling since as long as I can remember. And when I entered high school, that's really where it started to take off for me as far as my writing, as far as developing stories. And by the time I was 18, I had sat down and I penned my first novel manuscript, which I self-published as a 19-year-old. It was called The After Hours. And The After Hours, I initially self-published it, got it out there in a book format. I was doing book signings, really trying to hit the ground running as far as the marketing for that. Right. Although at the time it was tough, and I really had no idea what I was doing. I just said, I've got something to say, I want to say it, want to get it out there.
And what was that? What do you have to say in your novel?
Well, the After Hours, it centers around a protagonist, a cynic, whose setting is the city, which is, it's full of transgressions, it's full of immorality, it's full of social injustice. And so this protagonist, this cynic, he and his group of friends, really feel compelled to do something about this, to sort of combat it in a superhero-like way. And at the same time, our protagonist, John, he's also receiving these apocalyptic visions that coincide with the book of Revelation. And so, receiving these visions, if you would, he and his friends, they start fighting the evils in the city. They fight back, a la Batman or The Crow, for example. And the screenplay that I wrote, I changed the title for it. It's called I, John, based upon the lead-in or the protagonist of the book of Revelation, John. It's taken directly from the book. So I penned the screenplay in the years afterwards, spent some time polishing it up, sending it out, getting it critiqued, letting people take a look at it, industry insiders. I'm talking not just friends, but people who could actually offer constructive criticism. Sure. And so what I have now is like I said, a polished screenplay, which I'm very happy about, because it is a compelling story at the end of the day. It is a story about social injustice. It is a story about about how someone ordinary, an ordinary protagonist, an ordinary person who has a lot to say, especially when it comes to social agendas, that there's something you can do about it. I mean, granted, this story does take it to an extreme, and it does have elements of fantasy or sci-fi in there, but at the same time, this is really a story about going about making change.
So circling back to the question of how do you find the time and how do you switch your brain from one type of writing, which may be a little bit more structured and methodical to write the article, to writing the screenplay?
I think it's about setting time aside for each, knowing that when you're jumping into an article, you have to contact your sources, you have to develop your lead, you have to sit down, write it out, go over it again, make sure it makes sense, make sure that the information is in there and very clear and concise. I make my time for writing during daytime hours. It's the creative writing that I like to do in the evenings, that I like to do before going to sleep. Maybe I'm a little bit caffeinated before I decide to hit the laptop and start penning that screenplay or that blog or that element of fiction. But it's in the twilight hours where I like to put pen to paper and develop my creative abilities as a writer.
Right. So again, maybe it's not so much different, the article writing to the screenplay writing. as far as the structure is concerned. And there's still a certain type of structure, and there's still a certain type of methodology used to get it accomplished.
Yeah, there's definitely structure. There's definitely certain formats that you need to stay within, the guidelines to write each. And for me, it seems fairly easy to turn on and off that switch, to switch from writing journalistic articles to writing a screenplay. Tell
me about your publications. Where can people read your articles?
My articles can be found somepostweekly.com, miaminewtimes.com, and to contact me or to read my personal food blog, you can go to the86board.wordpress.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, also on Facebook, also on Twitter.
The86board.wordpress.com. Excellent. Well, we'll take a look, and thank you so much for joining us, John, and come visit us again when you're in town. And thank you guys for watching Aspiring Hollywood. I'm Luciano Saber. Until next time.